The dahlias are pretty late getting in the ground because we started late, our second year in, trying to get ourselves sorted out with infrastructure. The greenhouse didn't go up until October. We didn't decide to buy the tiller for the tractor implement until November. So most of these weren't in the ground until December. And a lot of them, like this little one down here, this little one here, were from cuttings that I was still taking in January and planting in February. I've lifted some of them. Some are just roots, I don't know that they'll do much. Some have actually got tubers. I'm going to lift them and wash them and then separate them today and divide them. I lifted the ones from those beds over there a few days ago and let them sit for a couple of days. And they were quite hard when it came to cutting them. And not only that, the eyes are a little hard to see. Apparently if you divide when you lift them, the eyes are visible. So I'll give that a try. This has got nice visible eyes. I'm also trying a bit of an experiment. After they were divided, I put single tubers back into the garden, and if they can overwinter and grow again in spring, it'll save us planting out these beds. And now to store them over winter, I'm trialling or experimenting with a couple of different ways. Wrapping some in Glad Wrap, and others I'm putting on wood shavings or pet bedding and storing them in polystyrene boxes. These are our dahlias down the back, which were the unnamed one. They were from a mystery bag. And I was going to try and ID them when they came up, but I didn't. And I'm leaving them in the ground just to see how they overwinter. There's something digging in through here, which I presume are rabbits, but they don't seem to be touching the tubers. Hopefully they realise they're not very tasty and they won't attack my other tubers when I put them in the ground. We initially put some insect cloth over it to protect them from the rabbits. So we'll see how they overwinter. Oh, it's been eaten away out in there. And this area down here is the bottom part of the paddock. And it's where the water usually comes. It's usually where it gets boggy. Severe drought is forecast for this winter, so I don't know whether that's going to be the case. But I'm prepared to sacrifice these ones as part of my experimenting. Little calves. These are dahlia cuttings that I took around February, I think, and I repotted them about a month or 6 weeks ago. They haven't sort of really grown, but they've stayed alive. And when I repotted them yesterday into some better soil, they had little tubers. So I'm just experimenting to see whether or not we can overwinter them and whether or not they'll stay green and I can take cuttings in the spring, or whether or not they'll die down and I can get some growth out of the tubers. And then there were these ones that did die, but they do have little tubers in them. So I'm just keeping them amongst the dirt, soil, over winter also, and see what we can get from those. More experimenting. Don't buy cheap trays if you're going to have them in a greenhouse. It gets quite hot. Buy the decent ones. Next job was to focus on the compost and turn it over from one bed into the next box. And there was also another agenda, and that was to try and find Terry's hammer, which he had
put in the bucket last time we used the tractor on the compost, and didn't realise until later on that he hadn't got it out of the bucket, and so now it's somewhere in these compost piles. And no, he didn't find it. And now onto the garlic planting.
I soaked these yesterday in a weak solution of sea salt to activate them, and we planted most of them. This is what's left over, so I'll fill in the gaps in this bed.
Half this bed was planted a few weeks ago, the other half I planted yesterday.
This is organic rice straw, which I sourced ironically from an organic garlic farmer. Apparently it's weed free, pesticide free, so hopefully won't be getting seeds popping up, and hopefully it'll suppress most of the weeds.
And now to deal with the weeds in the rest of the beds.
I might just turn over this with the fork just to disturb it, and then throw the straw on it and see if it suppresses them or whether or not they'll keep growing through. The soil's gorgeous underneath. I'll throw a couple of them away, but I'm not going to worry too much. It's a test to see whether or not straw will suppress any more growth. Guess while we're conducting experiments, and I've got plenty of straw, I might just cover half of this bed in a thick layer of the straw without disturbing the weeds, and see what happens there. All done. Now I've just got to find my tools. Another neglected bed over the last year or so was this, which we had potatoes in, and then we forgot about them. Now today there were some sprouting up. I think it's probably been 2 years since we've planted the originals, so I'm not sure if they're going to be any good or not, but we've covered it over with compost to see how we go. And then this bed has had nothing in it. I might just put the leftover garlic that I think I broke most of the root, the hard part on the bottom off, but I'll dig a hole, put it in there. If I see shoots in a couple of weeks, then bonus. If I don't, we'll use it for something else. Some of these were rotting. Most of them I couldn't break off with the base piece. It kept coming away. Oh, look we have here. Looks like that's okay. I'm just going to dig a hole, throw them in and see what happens.
I've employed the straw man.
If you only had a brain. The strawberries did have a bit of straw on them, but it's gone, so we'll just top it up, and I'll check on it in a couple of weeks whether I have to actually pull it back and weed around the plants.
And now to check out the greenhouse.
See how our garden beds in here are looking with the compost that was put on here a couple of weeks ago. This hothouse was a bit neglected last year. We were focusing on getting the rest of the garden done. It became a dumping ground for pots and whatnot. That little water feature isn't working. We trimmed up the passion fruit the other day, so maybe that might bear some fruit for us. But I'll have to just give this a bit of a light weed. And I might put maybe some lettuces in there over winter, because they're going to be used for chilies in summer. And through here we used to have lettuces and spring onions and radishes. And then on this side was some beetroot across the front, and then we had tomatoes growing across the back, which came up and sprawling over. It was gorgeous in here. So hopefully it'll start looking nice and lush soon. But there's our straw, and we'll cover that over the garlic that was planted yesterday.
It's looking a bit dark over there. So it's time to call it a day. And a season. Tomorrow's the 1st of winter. Thanks for watching.